to work on something outside the scope of their core role. And it led to some amazing things like Gmail and Google News and AdSense. So a number of products that have been really critical to the business.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Awesome Inc.'s podcast, where we highlight people pursuing their definition of, you guessed it, awesome. So buckle up and get ready for some more success story adventures and failures from Kentucky's tech and entrepreneur community. Hey guys, if you have not listened to part one with, I'll say it, our best friend, JRW, because we're here in Kentucky, go back. Listen to it. We talk a lot about team building, how to empathize with a culture, a lot of other good stuff, what it looks like to be at Google and come back here. Those are hopefully just some Easter eggs. And now you're getting all ruffled and then you go back. So let's say you did. Now you're listening to part two. Thanks for doing that as you're walking down the grocery store aisle. And with that, Liz, inside jokes are the best. Liz, why don't you kick us back off and then we'll have Jamie come share some awesome wisdom here in a second.
Sounds good. Garrett, when you look at me, you laugh. I don't know if that's insulting or a compliment.
No, because I like when people laugh. It's kind of like when you watch a baby laugh. It just brings you joy. Like, I know why you're laughing because...
So looking at me is like watching a baby laugh. Awesome.
Yeah, it's innocent. It's
hey
great.
Guys, I'm Liz. As a quick catch up, I'm Liz. I'm with our Venture Labs program here at Awesome Inc. For those of you who are just joining, we have kind of taken our 10 years working with startups and applied a lot of that learning to the corporate space. So we are trying to build this community of innovative thinkers in the world of corporate America. So we're going to keep interviewing one of our favorites today here, Jamie. Like Garrett said, rather, if you haven't listened to the first one, go back and listen to it. We talk about her history, kind of her career path up until now. But Jamie, we want to kind of pick up where we left off. We were talking about how to build teams, how to incentivize them, as you were starting to say. And I think that's something that we hear a lot from the CEOs and the HR, VPs of HR that we speak to, et cetera, is how do you build the right teams and incentivize them, especially when it comes to innovation and curiosity and new ideas. So I know you've spent a lot of time both researching that and figuring out how to implement that. So talk to us a little bit about you've got the ear of corporate companies that are listening. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked about that. And I'm really excited to talk about a topic I'm really passionate about that others may not be super jazzed to hear about, but I hope to change that, and that's performance management. And I think when a lot of people hear performance management, they think of evaluations and maybe feeling defensive and uncomfortable. And I think that it would be great to change that. And there's a number of ways to do that. I think the first part is really peeling back the layers of performance management. And within that, you have the expectations of a role. And then you have measurement, which should be to give people feedback on how they're doing, and then evaluation. And I think often those get grouped together in semi-annual or annual reviews, and people don't necessarily think of it as an opportunity to learn, but they see it as something just tied to their feedback number, and that's tied to bonuses and things like that. So I would love to encourage companies, no matter what their size is, to think of how performance management can be an opportunity to not just measure and not just evaluate your employees, but to help them learn and grow and develop. And a great piece of reading on that is On the Folly of Rewarding A While Hoping for B. And I will include that in the show notes. It's a pretty short read, and it's really interesting just to think about how you're incentivizing people and what they're doing. And I think some examples might be helpful for this. So thinking in, the academic world, you hope that professors do a great job teaching their students, but you're rewarding them for producing research and publications. So there's a mismatch in incentives. You can also look at sports teams. You hope that people work really well as part of a team, but they're being incentivized and paid as to how many baskets they score or how they're performing really as an individual. So there's a number of places where we hope for one behavior, but we're really rewarding and incentivizing something else. And another resource we'll include is a great book called Transforming Performance Management to Drive Performance. And there's a number of really great examples in this that highlights the idea of starting with identifying the right organizational objectives and priorities, and from there creating the appropriate expectations and evaluations for your employees. So again, just to go into an example, because I think a lot of the theory.
We love examples. We love them.
Good. If it's too much, just let me know. But a great example that really nailed the point home for me was thinking about two airline companies. Let's take Southwest and Emirates. So with Southwest, the organizational objective may be to get people from A to B as inexpensively as possible and on time. And with Emirates, the objective may be a luxurious experience. So you're going to want to hire differently. You're going to want to have different expectations for those flight attendants. One flight attendant may need to, make sure people get the service they need, but not necessarily be overly attentive. Whereas on Emirates Air, if people ask for pretzels and you're out, you may dig in to see what else you can get for them. So just some examples of how those high-level company objectives should trickle down to inform the expectations and ultimately the evaluations for people at all levels.
I love that this is your personal vendetta to redefine the narrative around review meetings. I think that's a great professional vendetta to have. But especially as it relates to innovation, we've been talking about curiosity. I think it is a really healthy push to ask of companies like, hey, if you value innovation and curiosity and helping your employees, then not only should you do something maybe like a workshop or these big displays of innovation, but you should do something as practical as to build it into your performance reviews, into your metrics meetings, into saying, something that I appreciate about Brian, our CEO, is he often in our metrics will say, I want you to set a metric for a new idea or something to take something you're personally good at and applying it to the team. I'm trying to think of one of the craziest ones he asked me to do. Sometimes it's as silly as if he's like, hey, I know you're running a lot, so put running as a review metric. But then other times he said, hey, you're trying to work on automation in your own job, so I want you to set an automation work sprint and try to get other people in on that as well. Sometimes it's even been, I know he's called out other of our coworkers on, hey, you have a heart for generosity, so I want you to figure out a way, that has nothing to do with our company bottom line. But he's saying, I take this so seriously that I want to put it into your performance review and metrics.
Invite people into what you are passionate about, which again goes back to what we talked about last episode with culture and a team. So that's so fitting.
But I don't know that I've heard anyone make that correlation of, hey, we can make performance reviews a good time if they're tied to things that matter and not just how much did you raise the bottom line or the top line.
Yeah, that's a good point. Unfortunately, I had a friend who worked for a company a couple months back and is no longer with them. And something happened and they had a review meeting, but someone pretty much said, oh yeah, this happened 3 months ago and yada, 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 you never fixed it. And my friend said, well, why is this the first I'm hearing about that? If that happened months ago. And so to what you're saying, we have quarterly review meetings. I think those do need to change so people, are having more frequent contact. And I'm pretty sure this is what you're about to jump into, but that just helps people. And that helps, again, what we're talking about with teams and people working and having a healthy culture. It's having awareness is so important for that.
Yeah. And I like what you said about having maybe a well-being or these other types of goals that are important, but maybe aren't directly related to your role, feeling like you can include that. And if you're in constant communication or kind of bake in measurement to your activities, then it's not just a single point in time. We talk about the measurement, how you did on the goals, and you're going to get a review because you're likely to either maybe inflate how you've done that goal or kind of water down your goals if you know that you're going to be evaluated on it. So I think the key piece in my mind is separating measurement from evaluation. So you can put really big, ambitious goals and you're going to be measured along the way. You'll get feedback. And then at the end, you'll be evaluated on those goals. And that way you can feel a little bit more receptive to feedback. You can be honest with how you're doing. And it's not just one big surprise conversation once or twice a year, but it's really baked into the culture and how you're getting things done. So that's great that you seem to already have that here.
Brian's the best. Come work for us, Mike. No, I do think our culture here is very unique. But I think what it sounds like, to maybe put it differently, I think what is important is if you are going to say you want things like curiosity and innovative thinking or people who think outside their own job description, then what you're asking of them, what was it you said about A and B, like asking for A but expecting B? Maybe I'm butchering that. But if you say you want that, but you're rewarding them only for a bottom line or for KPIs that have nothing to do with that, then there's a mismatch of expectations. And I think sometimes it's hard to recognize that allowing an employee to pursue something maybe slightly outside of their own job description can often have very real positive implications on how they do their current job. If they get better at some rabbit hole, right? You guys ask in your interviews, like, what rabbit hole did you fall down? Well, then let employees fall down those rabbit holes for a minute, which I think can be tough. I'm curious to your thoughts. I don't know what that balance is between like keeping your job like your main focus and then spending time maybe being curious or thinking outside the box. I don't know. Do you have like practical thoughts on that for companies of how to encourage maybe both and? Like, obviously you want your employees to do the job you've hired them to do.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a tension, because when you hire creative, curious employees, naturally they're going to be drawn to other types of work in addition to what they've been hired to do. And sometimes that can lead to really amazing products and things like Gmail, but other times that leads to them investing a lot of time in foosball or some other passion, which is great, but may not be something you want to pay them for at a company. So I think in terms of your performance management system, making sure that people are, nailing down the core role, have a clear understanding what's expected of them in this role, what they need to get done, and that's sort of table stakes. And then in addition to that, maybe carving out some time to experiment with other passions or interests that are related to the company's higher level objectives. And that's usually, I think, at larger companies, it's a little challenging to have just an open policy where people can explore whatever they want for a certain number of hours. I think it's more a conversation with your manager to figure out what makes sense given, the bandwidth on the team for that quarter. And if there are opportunities to contribute to another project or experiment with another team, a couple hours a week if you're still able to get your core responsibilities finished. So I feel like signaling that that's an opportunity at the company is really valuable because, like I said, curious people crave that. And that's really big for retention and productivity and making people feel excited to get to work every day. But balancing that with some guardrails and making it more a conversation and having them maybe explain how this other project will feed into some larger goals at the company or their work as well.
This feels like an accidentally great segue into talking about Google and myths at Google. So this was one of mine and Gert's first questions of you, of talk to us about the 20% rule at Google. It's something that I think is sort of almost like lore within the business world. But I feel like this relates. If there's this, this legend that Google gives people 20% of their time to spend on other things, which I imagine doesn't work out quite exactly the same in practice. But I'm not going to begrudge Google. They've built a really innovative culture. So what did that look like there in practice? Like how did they maybe fulfill on that, but also kind of be practical about that?
Yeah. I'm laughing because when I was doing nuke orientation for about a year, I would have a number of employees
also,
coming
quick pause. You just said noogler, which I need the audience to know. Google apparently loves turning oogle into anything else.
Yes,
so it's
true.
New people at Google, right?
Yes, thank you for stopping that behavior. Yes,
no,
noogler. Now I'm a zoogler, ex-googler. The list goes on with the oogler things.
We put awesome into everything, so we cannot judge anyone here.
That's a little bit more natural, flowing
Sure.
googler.
At least ours is an adjective, like a normal adjective.
But it was pretty funny because every orientation people would come in and there'd always be a question like, is it true? Do we get 20% time? Is every Friday like the day off for 20% time? And that's not exactly how it works, which makes sense given the size. And I laugh because a lot of people call it 120% time because the idea is there are a number of things to pursue at Google. But, people need to get their core work done. And then if there is a project that makes sense for the business and where their team is at that point in time, it's definitely an option to discuss that with your manager and make room for some other projects, maybe 5-10% of your time. I wouldn't say it's a strict 20% thing by any means at this stage. But it is funny because I think when it started, it was more people using Fridays was the day, people using the day to work on something outside the scope of their core role. And it led to some amazing things like Gmail and Google News and AdSense. So a number of products that have been really critical to the business. But I think as the company has gotten larger and larger, other people are focusing on, sometimes you'll get a 20% project, like I said, on foosball or trying every cafe in Mountain View. And while that's great to do, it's not necessarily supporting the business. And if you have 100,000 plus people going off and doing these things that aren't supporting the overall business goal, it gets a little chaotic. But I do think the ethos of that 20% time is very much still there. And if you talk to someone on a different team and you have the skills to contribute and it's really needed and would be helpful, it's definitely an open conversation to have with the lead of another team and your manager to make some time to contribute to some other efforts.
Yeah, I think it's important for leadership and, like I said, the managers and CEOs that we talk to hear. I think sometimes innovation can be a little bit scary. Like if you start letting employees run free, then it's just mass chaos. Like you said, they're like eating out at cafes and playing foosball and like there's no middle ground. But in fact, I think there has to be middle ground, and a lot of companies are finding that it's not an either or. And so I appreciate you kind of saying, yes, the ethos is important and the signaling is important, and following through on that signaling. Like you do the workshops and you guys give them very practical ways to live that out. But also you have a very large company to run at the same time, which I think it's just a healthy middle ground to remind people of.
Yeah. And I think it is hard to rein back these things, as you do have people who have been at the company when 20% time was a real thing, and things need to evolve as a company gets larger and competition evolves. It's important to be flexible and evolve, but it's also, I think, helpful to lay the groundwork for a scalable solution and making sure that the practices and programs that you're implementing, even as a startup, will scale and be effective as you grow to become a 10, 20, 30, 40, 100,000 plus company as well.
Something that Mike Hilton, the director of Venture Labs, he's started to say a lot, but I think it gets what you're saying. We often tell people we can build a program for you that builds innovation, but is minimally disruptive to day-to-day operations. And I think that's sort of the goal, right? To create this playground where people can come up with and build new ideas, but we're not going to come in and blow up your entire business model. That's not the point of new ideas and curiosity. It's to be scalable and to grow, which it sounds like is kind of what you're saying. Garrett and I have some fun questions. We have other myths at Google that we want to ask about.
Bring them.
The first thing though, this is how my mind works. Jamie, you said this a minute ago and I was trying not to laugh, but you said there are a number of things at Google that have to be done. And I laughed because Google's a number. It's not that funny, but I've just been thinking about that for the last 3 minutes.
But we're going to let you just sit with that
Thank you for sharing. I did see you laugh and I was like, what did I say?
It's a really big number. Okay. Anyways.
Inside Garrett's mind.
Yeah,
it's a scary place.
I need help. Okay. Anyways, Liz, why don't you take the first one?
So a couple of things that I feel like are the myths or maybe the perks. Are there massages? This one we personally care about here at Awesome Inc. because we do in non-COVID times have a masseuse that occasionally she's basically
family.
She's basically family. She's the startup founder's mom, and we love her so much, but it's sort of this like accidental perk that we have.
She needed practicum hours.
Yeah. And so we were like, twist our arm, we'll be your practicum hours, but it's not like real, right? It's not like the company, like we still have to pay her. We love you, Joyce.
Yes, so much.
But do you get daily massages? That's what we want to know.
I wouldn't say daily. I would say the perks, the massages, the food, those are very much alive and real, at least when I was there. I didn't get daily massages. The massages are heavily subsidized, and you do get a free massage when you start, and for your Google versary, like I said, the Googles and everything. So, or sometimes a manager may reward you with the free massage points and things like that. So the massages are very much alive and well. And they were a very nice perk, I have to admit. So yes, those.
I see your body relaxing as you say that.
I miss them. I mean, I haven't been there in several months now, a very long time. So I will miss those. I might have to get in here.
I wish are massages still happening in 2020? I imagine that's difficult.
I mean, I can imagine if you're on your stomach face down. Because,
Yeah.
you're breathing too
We don't
different.
need to get into the logistics of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Any
good
other
point.
ones you wanted to ask about, Garrett?
Something about dry cleaning. Is that a thing?
Yes, they do have the option for dry cleaning. I never did that because you are able to wear, t-shirts and jeans, which I wore most of the time. But there is an option to bring your dry cleaning. I know people would bring, so we had Google shuttles. I lived in San Francisco and worked down in Mountain View. So you had Google shuttles with Wi-Fi, and you'd get on the bus and you could work on the bus while you're riding down there. And people would bring suitcases full of their dirty clothes to do laundry because there are laundry machines, and like a lot of places in San Francisco and where I lived, it was a coin operated laundry place, and not many people, I feel like, have coins these days. So people did bring their laundry to do it there. That was very much a real thing.
Quick side story. So when I lived in New York, I worked for Carter's in Oshkosh, if anyone wore the little overalls when you were little. But they're headquartered in Atlanta. And so a couple of times a year, I would travel. I was assistant to our sales execs up there, which has also a side comment. Their sales team, what their commission structure was based off their personal sales and then a percentage of the whole, which I always found was interesting. And that it always changed as far as like what that needed to be. But I thought that was a pretty healthy model. But anyway, so I would fly to Atlanta a few times a year with our sales team, and we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, which for my post-college self felt larger than life. And I discovered that at a place like the Ritz-Carlton, they will shine your shoes for you if you leave them outside your door. So I would, no joke, pack every pair of leather boots I had, whether it was spring, summer, winter, or fall, and I would pack them in my suitcase, take them down. I would line them all up outside my hotel door, and they would all get shined, and I took them back. And my shoes have never looked better than in the 2 years that I worked for Carter's. And they're a disaster now because I don't get my shoes shined. But it felt like an accidental perk that they gave me that I took full advantage of because I was a cheap post-college student who took anything I could get. So thank you, Carter's. Kristen, if you're listening, my old boss, I don't think I ever told you that. I have one last thing in my notes that I actually don't even remember about, but it's a number, so I have to ask, what's the Google 15?
Oh, yes, the Google 15 or the Noogler 15. It's very much a real thing, and that is the idea that when people start at Google, there is free food, delicious food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, MKs, which are micro kitchens, everywhere.
Micro kitchens.
So that is a reference to the extra 15 plus pounds people gain when they start at Google.
I see.
And it's pretty funny. I heard some stat that with interns, they allocate, 3 times the amount of food they would for your average employee, because there's kind of that interesting idea of the interns, it's a finite period of free food. But, like most things, the free food and other things tend to normalize kind of that like hedonic treadmill idea that you adapt to anything. So I think the weights tend to level off, but it is very interesting with interns who only get to experience it for a short period, and then maybe they come back.
I only experienced Ritz-Carlton for a short period, so I took 8 pairs of boots down there. I think actually at one point my roommate gave me a pair for boots to take down. No, I get that. We probably have the Awesome Inc. Oreo 15, so we're big on Oreos around here.
They're just 15 cavities.
Yes, we have a lot of things that you have to get accustomed to around the office, but self-control with Oreos is one of them. But well, Jamie, this has been lovely. We've laughed, we chatted about Google, Noogler, Zoogler.
All the oogs.
Did I nail them or did I butcher them? Thanks for coming today. It's been so good to see you in person. Obviously, our listeners can't see you in person, but thanks for coming today and just sharing with us your history. Like I said, we love people who have gone out, learned a lot, come back, and are willing to share it with those in the Bluegrass region who are looking to just grow companies and grow them quickly. So, Garrett, thanks for letting me steal your podcast again.
You're welcome.
Jamie?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to hear that there is an audience interested in all this great research that I think can apply really all over the place. So, and I'm so excited with what's happening here at Awesome Inc., supporting a thriving startup and tech community. So excited to be back, and thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. We'll see you guys next time.
Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Awesome Inc.'s podcast. And another quick thank you to Lee Rosevere and a few members from our community who provide the music that you hear in this show. Lastly, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. Or, even better, come on down to our space. Come be a part of our community and get plugged in, and let's start something awesome together. You guys rock. We'll see you next time.